Page for Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. It's Election Day in Virginia, where Democrat Terry McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin barnstormed the Commonwealth up until the last moments in a final get-out-the-vote push. Our team of Kerry Pickett, Mika Sellner, and Seth McLaughlin have the race covered from all angles. Campaigning with former Governor Bob McDonnell and former Senator George Allen in Roanoke, Youngkin said the election can change the trajectory of this great Commonwealth. McAuliffe closed out his campaign with a familiar warning that Youngkin is cast from the same mold as former President Trump. Youngkin is fighting to become the first Republican to win statewide since McDonnell in 2009. McAuliffe, meanwhile, is out to prove that the Democratic takeover of Richmond in recent years was no fluke and that concerns about President Biden's struggles are overblown. The U.S. Border Patrol counted 557 migrant deaths along the southern border over the past year, shattering the previous record. Stephen Dinan reports deaths easily topped the record year of 2005, when agents counted 492. In fiscal year 2020, just 247 deaths were tallied, and in 2019, during the previous migrant surge, 300 deaths were recorded. The deaths span the U.S.-Mexico boundary and include everything from exposure to the elements to falling off of the border wall. Agents also set a record for rescues with 12,854. That was more than twice the number recorded in fiscal 2020, the previous record holder. Border Patrol agents caught more people attempting the crossing in fiscal 2021 than in any previous fiscal year. The Biden administration is playing defense at the UN Climate Conference after the president urged other major energy producers earlier this week to produce more oil. Valerie Richardson reports climate czar John Kerry insisted there was no inconsistency between the administration's aggressive climate change position and the president's effort to persuade OPEC and Russia to open up supply amid a global energy crisis. Biden said earlier in his overseas trip that the world is going to stop subsidizing those fossil fuels, but that it wasn't realistic to stop using them immediately. Critics say the president's cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline and moratorium on new fossil fuel leases on federal lands and waters have undercut domestic production and depressed investment in domestic energy. A reminder that you can find all these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. Don't have access yet? Visit WashingtonTimes.com/George and get 25% off your annual subscription. The Biden administration warned the Supreme Court of an avalanche of state laws seeking to challenge federal constitutional rights should the justices leave in place Texas's new law banning most abortions. Alex Sawyer reports Texas is arguing in court that challengers to the law, abortion providers, and the Department of Justice lack standing to sue because state authorities don't enforce the state law. Instead, private citizens can file lawsuits against abortion providers who defy the law. Elizabeth Prelogar, the Justice Department's new Solicitor General, said that was a tricky way of trying to nullify the federal constitutional right established in the High Court's 1973 Roe v. Wade decision. The court's 3 Democratic appointees appeared sympathetic to those claims during nearly 3 hours of arguments. Justices Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Clarence Thomas, and Chief Justice John Roberts appeared open to Texas's defense. And finally, before the 2020 election, former President Trump considered setting up a panel of experts to study the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic, along with seeking as much as $10 trillion from China for damages. That's according to a book by former White House aide Peter Navarro, our Bill Gertz reports. The effort was scuttled by then Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow. They feared the inquiry would cause stock markets to crash or trigger a war with China. Navarro writes the effort's main purpose was to time a report to be released before the 2020 election as an attempt to sway voters to vote for Trump. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Just search Washington Times. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times and on Facebook for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.